congratulations on season 10 of the show. Did you ever think when you first got started that you would be doing this for 10 seasons?
You know what? When you get started in something like this, you don't even know what you're thinking. When we got started, like literally like 11 years ago, it was a fog of different. I mean, it's just like nothing you've ever done before. You know, we had, there were half of my peers didn't even know I was a polygamist yet. You know, I mean, like I had friends, I mean, people I associated with, people I worked with that didn't even know I was a polygamist. Wow. Like, and before I had decided that we would go public, I started dropping little hints that would start the rumor mill through work. You know, I worked in a very large company, and that helped, you know, because I didn't have to go telling everybody, hey, listen, you know,
right.
And the rumor mill sort of carried that for me. And in that sort of a trial balloon, I realized that a lot of my peers were going to be a much more open, kind about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Were you surprised by that people were kind about it? Or I'm sure a lot of people had a lot of questions too.
If the whole thing for me was, I would almost inevitably tell people once I got to know them, once I could trust them, once I felt like they knew me for content of my character rather than for my credo or my lifestyle or my religion. Right. And so I was a little bit more comfortable with it once people knew me. The tough part was sort of coming through that door. Getting in a place where with unfamiliar people you don't know who you know, and you know, like does a guy you know, you don't automatically say what your sexual preference is, or you know, you meet people and stuff like that. So you know, it's almost become like this thing. Well, hey, I'm Kody Brown. This is my wife, and I have other wives. Just so you know, it's just or. The whole experience has been somewhat exciting and also very awkward.
I'm sure. Well, fast forward 11 seasons later, now we're in a very unusual situation this season because obviously we have been in this pandemic, we've been in quarantine. So I'm sure a lot of people want to know, what is quarantine like with 4 wives?
Quarantine with 4 wives. Okay. It's like, it's quarantine with 4 wives is like on and then off, you know? I mean, it's like, I've spent, you know, the very beginning of all of this, you know, gosh, I don't want to give away any spoilers or anything, but yeah, we ended up having to be separate a little bit. And that was a strange experience. And the toughest part about it was how you're in the COVID thing and they're talking about a 2-week lockdown. And so you're like going, okay, this is going to dump out and become like a normal flu, or it's going to normalize in 6 weeks. I mean, so nothing's going to be weird after 6 weeks here. And that was foolish optimism.
Right.
Because in the end, what's it been now, a year? Yeah, we're 1 month, or no, we're 3 weeks. We're 3 weeks from a year. Yeah.
Who would have thought?
So, yeah, it's been a weird experience because in the beginning I didn't know how to manage it because I thought it would just dissolve with the news cycle. You're like, okay, in 8 weeks, our life is normal, and hope you don't get the flu, you know. But it's not been like that. It's been a very strange experience. I'll say that by now I'm suffering COVID fatigue, just really like sort of sick and tired of it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things, optimistic ways to look at it. Like, you know, it's been good. You know, I've settled into each home. When I'm there, I settle in, I settle down, I connect more with the kids. I'm not just picking up my bag and leaving 2 days later, that kind of thing. So there have been some benefits, sort of slow down your life, smell the roses. It's hard. It was great when it was in the spring and the summer, a lot harder in the winter time, you know, and it's winter now. And so you get cabin fever, sort of.
Yeah, definitely. How has this tested relationships in a different way?
Well, you know what, when you're, okay, so the lifestyle isn't always conducive
Mm-hmm.
to security, if you will. And so if you're insecure and you haven't been with your spouse for, you haven't seen your spouse, you haven't associated for a week or two, you start to, even with phone calls, you start to question, like, I don't think any of my wives could have been military wives. I couldn't have been gone for a year,
Yeah.
deployed, and then come back
Mm-hmm.
and have a relationship. I just, maybe that's the expectation, and so those military wives deal with that better. We've had a hard time. I think it's been a challenge. And so it's not been fun. There's kind of a world where you're either arguing about what we're doing about COVID-19,
Right.
or you're reassuring each other that your relationship is solid.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, you see in the first couple episodes of this season that, that it's obvious that sometimes the five of you don't like being together at all times. I mean, how stressful is that for you, and who makes it the most difficult for you?
Well, when I see the episodes, it makes me realize that I am not being calm when we're together.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, there's this psychic tension with us. What would cause it? It's like, I used to want to throw a business meeting for the family. Like me and my four wives, we sit down, we talk about business at hand, kind of update what's going on with kids, all this stuff. And, when we were in Vegas, we were homes next to each other, we would do this fairly frequently. Well, long before we moved, we stopped doing it as much because it was just, for some reason, it was awkward. It was frustrating. There always seemed to be the psychic tension. Now, more like recently, watching the episodes and realizing how much psychic tension there is, or I don't know what another word for it would be. It's kind of the word we've coined is like, I realized that I need to calm down, and I need to invite all of them to calm down. But that's all retrospective, because I'm watching it and I'm going, holy cow, why am I so angry? Why am I in this bad place? And as we broadcast it to the whole world, I'm like, gosh, I really have got to calm down.
Yeah.
And anyway, so it's more of a situation where I don't really understand. I mean, maybe it's because I'm trying to, whatever the psychology is. I was a third or fourth child. Yeah, I was the fourth child. I was literally the baby of a subset in a family.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, my mom had 10. And so I'm the fourth. I'm like this baby of the family.
Yeah.
And each one of my wives is the oldest child or oldest daughter.
That's so funny.
They're used to being in charge and being the boss. Mm-hmm. And I'm in a world where I'm supposed to be in charge, but I don't feel like the boss. And so maybe that's what's going on.
I mean, do you almost feel like you're living 4 separate lives rather than one cohesive life, I guess?
I feel like, my wives might feel like in fact, it seems like my wives are in 4 different worlds. Mm-hmm. They're all actually at a different stage of their life, but I'm on some kind of weird relationship conveyor belt.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, how do you deal with jealousy between all the wives? Like you said, because now you're spending more time probably at homes because of, the pandemic and things like that. And I'm sure, like you said, it kind of probably plays mind games every now and then. So how do you put everybody's mind at ease, and how do you deal with jealousy between the 4 of them?
Well, you kind of have to look at it in this world of, in terms of, referring to a wife, I have to sort of have this attitude or this saying that you will get your time. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, we can survive time apart. And the hardest thing has been everybody has had to choose. Mm-hmm. Okay, as we get into the pandemic, we end up having to, in the very beginning, we were very weak about it, but we tried to establish some ground rules for exposure, to prevent exposure to the virus. And then the most important thing was that we keep from spreading it throughout all the households, spreading it through a whole family. And so we tried to establish some rules of, if you will, Corona etiquette, yeah. I guess, or COVID etiquette, just to keep from spreading. And this is all counseled to me from our doctor. Mm-hmm. And in the process of doing that, some of us have been more willing to be compliant than others of us. And that's been the challenge, is if a wife isn't completely compliant, if she has to travel, she's going to go see her kids, if she's going to be potentially exposed and then has to quarantine, after a while, she's going, well, do you even love me? Well, yeah, I do, but you have to quarantine.
Yeah.
I can't come over quarantining because you put yourself at risk, and that's not fair for me to put the entire family at risk because you traveled.
Yeah.
It's been a real challenge.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, we see this season that a storyline that's going to emerge is that the spark maybe seems to be fading between you and Mary. I mean, what can you kind of tease about that, and how are you working to get back on track, and are things back on track between the two of you?
Well, Mary and I have been in a very dark place for a very long time. It's been more about trying to get ourselves out of this hole that we dug ourselves into, I guess. And so what heals things, I hope time heals things. I hope that some communication heals things. So it's been a long time, and it's been very difficult. And it's more like this year, this time, we actually have an in-depth talk about where we're at.
Yeah. I mean, does it ever get to the point where you're like, maybe this relationship isn't working anymore? Is that something that you believe in? Or
in plural marriage, I don't feel like I've got the right to say, this is over, this is ending.
Okay.
I have dominion over my own body and where I'm at, but I don't feel like I'm not in a place where like I say, hey, I'm divorcing you. I can't do that. However, any one of them I feel like can. And I feel like they need to understand that they can leave. If it's not working for them, they can leave. Nobody's going to be a prisoner here. And the sad thing is when I've expressed that, like in times I've been sitting down with our family counselor and I've been saying, hey, ladies, nobody's a prisoner here. If you don't like where you're at in this family, figure it out, make your choices. You're free. And my wives were offended by that. They were like, well, what, you got to try and get rid of me? And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
But you understand that on its face, plural marriage is a double standard, you know? So being that on its face, plural marriage is a double standard in some senses, there's other double standards that we have in the family that we sort of tolerate. And that double standard is I don't get to leave, but they can.
Right. Got it. Thank you for clearing that up. I appreciate it. You know, you are spread obviously you're spread very thin because you're moving from household to household to household. I mean, there must be times when you're not in the mood to be romantic or intimate or anything like that. I mean, how do the wives deal with that as well? And do they get upset?
We refer to plural marriage or polygamy in our religious culture as the principle. And it is actually named scripturally in our scriptures as the new and everlasting covenant. And so there is sort of an effect if me and one of my wives if we're in a good place, and I've been away for a little while because I've been at other wives' homes, it's new. There's a newness, there's a freshness about the relationship. And so it can be very romantic. The option or the opportunity for romance is there, but it is very dependent on the individual relationship that I have with each and every wife. Right. The tough part is, and this is why it's a challenge this is why it's a challenge when we're together, because the challenge of being together is each wife gets to sort of see or feel the energy that I have with another wife. And then it becomes very real to them. Like if one wife is in a bad place with me and our relationship isn't really flowing well like it should be, and she sees me with a wife that things are flowing well with, that can be challenging. So here's the thing, we are one family, but each of my wives with me have their own marriage. So we're one family, but four separate, independent marriages. And, I've had wives go when I've come home grumpy, talking about something, making accusations, in a bad mood, that kind of thing. I've had a wife go, hey, that's not me. Don't be accusing me of that. That's not my personality. I don't do that. That's somebody else. you know, so
Yeah.
it's kind of a world where, you really just have to make sure you're strengthening each and every relationship. And, you're involved with people who have a choice. I have a choice. And so every day, what are we choosing and how are we interacting with each other?
Yeah.
So I'll admit though, it's much tougher in my world in the group, which is funny because I really had been pushing to get us back into one home.
I was going to say, yeah, is that still on the table as well?
We pretty much put that to bed last season. Okay. 9. I felt like we had put that to bed, but in the process of putting that to bed, I got inquisitive. I'm like, why doesn't this work for us? And so I started going to wives saying, why doesn't this work for us? And that is where a lot of the apparent struggles we have in this season start to stem from, is I get what I would call kind of an awakening, if you will. Well, I don't want to do a spoiler, but coming up, there's a scene where I'm with my 4 wives and I am very angry. And I am cynical and I'm like, this is all, and I'm in this mood, terrible mood about how I feel like they really don't care to be in a relationship with each other. I mean, one of our openers from years gone by, like in our first or second season, when we had this opener where Christine's like, I didn't want to marry a man. I wanted sister wives. For me, it wasn't about the husband. It was about my sister wives. And it's weird to me that that I'm starting to see what I think is us devolving away from that. And it feels more and more and more like it's just these independent relationships and we're less and less a family.
No, I mean, that's got to be frustrating for you because I would imagine that you would think over time that things would get easier and that you gel as one big unit. But now it seems like it's getting that there's so much tension between all the women, especially with Christine. We see that a lot, or at least so far this season.
Right. So I think the tension, whenever they're having tension with each other, I translate it maybe that it's tension with me. I don't really understand it, but in my view, I'm sitting here going, I'm in my cynicism, I'm making an accusation pretty much this whole season that my wives don't want to be around each other.
This is kind of a fun question, but obviously I don't know if you ever watched The Bachelor, but The Bachelor dates like 30 women at one time when he first comes in.
What
advice?
I see that. I see The Bachelor, and if I can say this word, it's not a 4-letter word. But when I watch The Bachelor, I think, oh, you poor bastard. And what advice have I got for him? Here's the thing. He's going through this process in The Bachelor of picking one woman. What I'd like to see is see this dude. I really like to see him. Okay. Yeah. Okay. You think you're all tough. You're a rich guy with your big pectoralis major and your 32-inch waist. Oh yeah. And you're taller than all these women. And I'm a short, fat dude. And you want to show me how bad you are? Marry 4 of them.
Then come talk to you. Totally. Do your kids, I know obviously your kids range in all different ages, but do they start having questions about polygamy? And does anybody ever question, their family situation, or is this just normal for them? And do they want to do this as well? Or is that their choice?
So I've heard a lot of plig kids. That's kind of the self-deprecating name that we used to that the kids used to call themselves when they were little. We're plig kids from different families, members of my family, nieces, nephews, stuff like this, where there was, if the family's functional, it makes them feel special. But every family in polygamy is very different, just like every family in monogamy. You have some extremely functional people, and you have some beyond dysfunctional people that shouldn't really be in that place.
Right.
The Brown family probably land in there in the middle. But I think my kids, in many ways, it's a duplicitous situation. It's a contradiction of, this was the most wonderful life, and boy, there were some hard things that happened. And, for most of us growing up, depending on, whether we're optimistic in viewing our past or not, we might feel the same way. So I think there is a challenge with many personalities in plural marriage, but it can be just as wonderful as anything else out there. Yeah. And it's like anything else. You've got that duplicitous dichotomy. It can be one way or the other or both. And it's really how you view it.
Definitely. Are you and Robin done having kids?
That's really up to her, but it's always fun to sit here and feel my youth going, I can have kids if I want to, and I do that to my adult children sometimes. It's not cool to Robin. She's like, oh, this jerk is doing it again. And I'm like, I can have more kids if I want to. I might have kids younger than your kids, stuff like that. It's more like a dumb thing where it's like, I'm just challenging my kids and I'm teasing them. It's like, any of my kids do something really awesome. I'm like, oh, cool. I've got a washboard stomach. What have you got? Because they're bragging. So I brag, and that's kind of how I the whole kids thing. But that's really, to be fair, personally, I think it's up to Robin. But whenever I ask her, she always goes, well, it's up to us. We make this decision together.